RTP 2816 West, Safety Cascade RTP, over. 2816 West, go ahead. I believe if you look at that thing called a signal, the color scheme should be changing shortly. Any permits?
If you miss the train I'm on, you will know that I am gone. You can hear the whistle blow 100 miles. Or so goes the old Peter, Paul, and Mary song. The Canadian Pacific Railway was not one to pass up an opportunity for public outreach. In 2006, the railway began working hand in hand with filmmaker Stephen Lowe to create an IMAX film about the railway's Rocky Mountain crossing and history. At the same time, Canadian Pacific was engaged in an avenue of public outreach aimed at train buffs that no other major railroad had attempted. Microsoft Train Simulator was the premier consumer rail simulator at the time, and CPR partnered with a number of MSTS content creators to offer a selection of Canadian Pacific content for free download on their website. Today, we're revisiting this content. Let's take a ride through the Rockies and into some MSTS nostalgia. Canadian Pacific's official MSTS content, which they defined on their website as content made with their knowledge and consent, started with a few items and grew over time. The flagship sets offered were a 1955-era Canadian Streamliner set, a Royal Canadian Pacific set, the Empress 2816, and the Canadian Pacific Holiday Train. The Canadian set was a careful modification of a Via Rail passenger set created by Train Artisan, a premier content creator in the early days of MSTS. Several content creators worked with Canadian Pacific's historian to make the set as accurate as possible, given the confines of simulation circa 2005. The Royal Canadian Pacific set was a representation of the luxury rail tour service operated by Canadian Pacific. It was a set of passenger cars either made for the set or borrowed and modified from the Holiday Train to represent the real thing. The pack used the engines from the Canadian set. The Empress, H-1B Hudson No. 2816 in excursion service, included the engine from the Canadian Pacific Steam Locomotive Heritage Collection, as well as two service cars. The set borrowed the passenger cars from the Royal Canadian Pacific set, which in some ways makes the Empress, Royal Canadian Pacific, and 1955 Canadian sets all intertwined. The website did suggest a specific installation order for best results. The Holiday Train pack included a bedecked AC 4400 diesel with a full set of equally festive cars to go along with it. The real Holiday Train is a charitable event aimed at raising funds and donations for food pantries. The website suggested a donation to one's local food bank if you enjoyed the simulated train. Over time, more locomotives and rolling stock were added, along with a shortened demo version of the Kicking Horse Pass route by a group called Maple Leaf Tracks, which still exists today. The demo route came with an AC 4400 diesel locomotive and grain train. Elsewhere on the website was even more content. Under the Locomotives tab, you could find a set of Fairbanks Morse Trainmaster locomotives, Green Goat switchers, a pack of GP9 and SD90 locomotives, another AC 4400, a GP38, an RSD17, Alco C630 diesels, and a rail grinder. Under the Rolling Stock tab, you could find a set of intermodal cars, an Icebreaker boxcar, a set of reefers from a group called Tiger Trains, a U-Class converted tourist sleeping car, and a Sperry car. The Canadian Pacific Steam Locomotive Heritage Collection, which the model of 2816 came from, is a larger collection of Canadian Pacific steam power. While it was not offered on the Canadian Pacific website, it was originally released as donationware with the CPR's blessing as a fundraiser for the restoration of Royal Hudson 2860. Seeing as it had the go-ahead from Canadian Pacific, the pack could be considered at least partially official. The page for the Empress included a link to the website for the collection. The collection was sold on CD for a few years and raised several $1,000s before the fundraiser concluded in 2007. The collection was later posted for free on trainsim.com. Looking back, what is there to find as far as nostalgia among this content? In my case, back in the 2010s, I only made use of a couple things from the CPR website, mostly the Kicking Horse Pass route. I grew up with a documentary which featured a segment on the spiral tunnels of the pass, and being able to run through them in virtual form was something else. The day I was able to download the Steam Heritage Collection over what was then our AOL dial-up internet connection was a major one for me. I had a fascination with the Empress for years prior, and being able to run her in the simulator was a big deal. The rest of the equipment in the collection was just icing on the cake, but I learned a fair bit about Canadian Pacific's steam power just from getting a good look at all the different classes of locomotive in the simulator. It was all equipment that I got much enjoyment out of. I have no doubt that for those who downloaded the other packs from the CPR website, almost none of it was forgotten. All that being said, between the Heritage Collection and the equipment on the website, for how many major railroads could you represent everything from the early days to the Golden Age to the streamliners to the doldrums of the 70s to present day using nothing but content either offered by or greenlit by the very railroad you were representing in the simulator? Everything you've seen in this video either came from the CPR website or from the Heritage Collection. This is all 100% official content. Whether for its engineering and construction, its worldwide transportation reach, or its iconic appearance, the Canadian Pacific Railway was a legend. The fact that the railway had someone inside who recognized how a popular simulator could be used for outreach says to me that in the early 2000s, there were people on the inside not hard-locked to the typical corporate models. Someone there said, "Oh, you'd like to run some virtual trains with our branding on them? Here's some stuff to get you started. Enjoy." That, to me, is worth a tip of the hat. The MSTS section of the Canadian Pacific website remained accessible until around 2011, when the MSTS content pages were not carried over after an overhaul to the CPR website. Granted, at the time, MSTS was no longer being published, and existing copies were starting to have problems on modern operating systems. Regardless, the Wayback Machine has a very complete record of the MSTS web pages. Here today and gone tomorrow best sums up the way the internet tends to go. However, for myself and anyone else who downloaded and used the content, neither the enjoyment had running the trains, nor the fact the Canadian Pacific itself cared enough to offer such a thing is likely to be forgotten. It doesn't necessarily have to be forgotten either, as OpenRails can run most of the content. Granted, there are some items that have problems in OpenRails, but the majority of it is fine. Whether you're looking at nostalgia from the days of Microsoft Train Simulator, or new memories made in OpenRails, the official Canadian Pacific Railway content can still bring enjoyment.